So, Rachel, thank you for joining us today. So, this is Rachael Crook from Lifted Talent, who is going to tell us a little bit about her background. So, if you could just tell us a bit about your professional background and what your inspiration is behind Lifted Talent.
Yeah, sure. Well, hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be here. So I think the first thing to say in terms of my background, so I run a company called Lifted, and we have two divisions, Lifted Care, which provides care to people, and Lifted Talent, which is what we're talking about today. And Lifted Talent was focused on trying to fix the recruitment and retention crisis in social care, so just a small mission. In terms of my background, I was 24 and doing a master's at Oxford University when my lovely mum, who was 56 at the time, was diagnosed with early onset dementia. And it was a huge surprise, as you might imagine, because I was so young and she was very young. And I was really confronted straight away with the social care sector. And I was just really shocked by how overlooked it is, and yet how important it is, and how little support and innovation were being put into supporting care workers and care providers trying to do a really difficult job. And I thought that technology could play a really important role in making that change. So fast forward a few years, I was in the Cabinet Office. I was a senior advisor in the Prime Minister's Implementation Unit, and I was advising on delayed transfers of care in the NHS as a civil servant.
Okay.
And then I left government and I went to work as a private sector consultant for McKinsey and Company, and kind of learned my way around how to start a business. But more and more that I could see that the opportunity in the care sector was growing, and so were some of the problems. And so I decided to quit my job and start Lifted about 4 years ago now.
Okay, fantastic. So in terms of, weighing up the pros and cons of, recruiting locally and then recruiting from abroad, what are the benefits of recruiting from abroad?
Yeah, so Lifted Talent objective really is to make it really easy, straightforward, simple, and ethical to hire staff from overseas. I think some of the massive advantages are, right now, if you're hiring locally or operating in a really competitive small local talent pool, you've literally got the world if you take international recruitment, and there is an enormous number of incredibly talented people who are desperate to come to this country and want these jobs. So the ability to access all those incredible people is brilliant. Often the level of education experience they've got is really brilliant. It's not uncommon for the people that we're supporting care providers to recruit internationally to have multiple degrees, to have quite significant professional experience. I think as well, it also then provides you with a pipeline of talent for your organisation. So it's not just about providing those carers that you desperately need to provide those clients with the care they need, but it's also about how do you shore up the support, how do you shore up the future of your organisation and be able to provide great people. And then the other thing is the retention rates are much higher. So the industry average retention rates, you might see a 40% churn rate every year. That's what the Skills for Care estimate the churn rates be. International recruitment retention rates are plus 95%. Wow. And there's a really strong reason for that. Is because once somebody's been in this country for 5 years, they can stay here forever. And for them and their families, that is completely life-changing. You're talking about countries where youth unemployment might be as high as 60%. And suddenly they can come here, they can bring their partner, they can bring their children, they can build a new life here. So the ability to, the inbuilt incentive for them to stay is really strong. So I think those are some of the key advantages.
Okay, brilliant. And, how complex is the international recruitment process for home care providers to navigate?
Well, with Lifted Talent or without Lifted Talent?
Both.
Both. It is a complicated process. It's complicated for a couple of different reasons. I think it's complicated because there's a new compliance regime to follow. So it's a regulated activity, and we all know about that because we work in line with the CQC regulations. But you have to get a license from the Home Office, and then you have quite an important series of obligations to comply with. And if you don't get them wrong, you do lose your license, and that has big implications to get them right. So that's one element of it. The other complexity of it is the financial complexity of helping people relocate, and then there's also just an operational complexity of bringing people to this country. It's not a new job, it's a new life, and that responsibility is big. And then I think there's also another under noticed complexity, which is just like the moral, emotional responsibility of helping somebody, and often their children, move across the world to start a new life. And they don't have anyone here, so they will come to you with all their problems, and that can be a huge responsibility for a care provider that is already struggling to try and kind of meet demand and struggling with all the different challenges that the care sector faces. And so the reason why we built Lifted Talent was because Lifted, my care business, wanted to expand into more areas of the country, and we just couldn't recruit carers in that area. So we decided to get a license and recruit internationally, and we were just, again, really shocked by how hard it was to do. And so we have built a technology platform that basically is an online platform for you as a care provider to go on. We'll help you get your license, and then we'll help you with a dashboard of candidates that you can hire from. You kind of go on, watch videos of those candidates, learn a bit about their experience. And then once you hire them, Lifted manages the whole process. So we have a technology platform that keeps you up to date with everything. We arrange housing, we arrange cars, we sort out all your compliance with the Home Office. But then we don't stop there. Like, once that candidate started with you, that's to some extent the easy bit done. The hard bit is making sure that person stays and has a great life here in Britain, and we'll manage that whole process for you for as long as that person works for you.
Okay, so you've answered a couple of my next questions in that answer. Thank you so much. So how do you, in terms of the support that you give, are you when a carer arrives and they start working for a company, are you still supporting that company through the process for a set amount of time? How does it actually work?
Yeah, well, we don't see it as a kind of one and done. So our preference is to work with individual care providers on an ongoing basis. So we become an ongoing recruitment stream. So typically we're kind of always processing some people for you through the journey. So when someone lands here in Britain, we will meet them at the airport. We will deliver in-person training for life in the UK. So we have a dedicated trainer that will provide support, and we cover everything from how to make a cup of tea to what's car insurance and why it's really important that you have it. And kind of what are all the expectations that are different about life here in the UK. And then we will provide ongoing support to care providers and to the carers. And the reason in part that we do that is because we think it's the right thing to do, but we've also built a financial incentive for ourselves into our model, because we don't charge any upfront recruitment fees. And in fact, we cover all of the upfront costs care providers often have to pay. So we'll pay all your Home Office fees, and then you pay us a monthly fee per care worker that works for you. And the reason we do that is we think we're put our money where our mouth is. If we've said to you that we're going to hire a great person and we're going to retain that person, then we then need to create a financial incentive for that to be the case. And so you don't pay us if that person quits. So therefore, we have a long-term relationship, not just with you, but also with the individual care worker.
Okay, interesting. So what are the main problems that are encountered?
In general, international recruitment.
Yes.
So I think it depends. I mean, obviously, it differs from care provider to care provider. Some of the big challenges are people not understanding the compliance expectations appropriately. And for example, if you employ someone locally who says they haven't got enough hours with their existing sponsor, that's actually not, unless they're working their existing hours elsewhere, then they're not allowed to also work for you as well. So lots of rules that people just don't understand, and they change often as well. So that's one problem. Another challenge that people often experience is if you've not properly vetted and understood not just the documents, but the personal circumstances of the people that you recruit, you could end up in a pickle. So for example, if you relocate somebody here with a young child, say a child under 1, without a partner, and they have no funds for childcare, they're not entitled to public benefits, so they won't have any childcare, and then they can't work for you. So they can't even earn any money to pay for childcare because they have to look after their child. So there are challenges like that that can be really difficult. And so that's why there's a whole series of criteria that we would say is really important to make sure that you have in place for each person that you recruit. Another really big challenge is driving. Home care providers in particular really need care workers to be able to drive. And because people are desperate to get here, sometimes they will say they can drive when actually what they can do is go along very slowly 10 miles an hour, which is obviously not ideal in some areas. And so there is a pretty high rate of carers crashing cars. And often they don't hurt themselves, significantly, but they'll write off the car, and that can be really challenging. So driving, I think, is a key barrier. And so that's why, as part of our process, we've introduced an assessed driving course as part of our induction process, because it's such an important issue for people. But that's really challenging if you've relied on these care workers to get to their shifts, and then suddenly that happens. That can be really difficult. So there are a bunch of different challenges that come up through the process.
Okay, thank you. So how long does the process actually take?
So to get a license, that's the first step. So if you don't have if you've never done international recruitment before, and this is also the case if you want to sponsor people who are here in Britain, who are not coming in from overseas, but who are already here, you need to get a license. please don't go and pay a lawyer. No disrespect to lawyers, but I don't think you need them, and this is a particularly complicated application. So with Lifted Talent, we do your application for you for free as long as you agree to hire through us. If you apply outside Lifted, then typically it'll take kind of 6 to 8 weeks to get your license back. And we've built a piece of technology which means we can get them back in a week usually. And then once you have your license in place, you need certificates of sponsorship. So you need to apply for certificate of sponsorship. That often takes 3 weeks. Once you've got that in place, then you can start hiring. And typically we would say it's about a month. We aim for a month door to door. So from hire to that person being here in the UK ready to start work with you, we aim for a month. It's that long to take. We can do it faster, but we say a month is about average.
Okay, so which countries are you typically recruiting from?
So because Lifted is a technology platform, we don't target specific countries. And in fact, there's quite strict regulations against targeting countries on the red list, for example. So we just accept applications direct to employers for wherever they come in the world. And people actually apply for jobs through WhatsApp. And then we use an algorithm to check those candidates' applications against the criteria that individual care providers have. And we use videos and we use voice notes rather than CVs because we think it's a much better way of seeing how someone's going to interact with somebody once they actually get here. I'd say the most common countries that people are coming from to the UK are India, Sri Lanka, and then sub-Saharan African countries. So countries in West Africa like Nigeria, and in East Africa like, East and South, so Zimbabwe, South Africa. Those are the kind of most common countries that people are coming from to the UK.
Okay, and how do you counter worries that providers may have about aspects such as language and cultural assimilation?
Yeah, I think there are some big challenges there. You know, there are worries about language, and I think it's important to distinguish between what are kind of legitimate concerns and what is just good old-fashioned racism, and both of that exists, sadly. I think a lot of the time what is being expressed as a preference for a particular kind of care or something from a client is often just a fear around communication, and so that's why we focus really heavily on video interviews. So on our dashboard, individual care providers can see videos of carers and they can get a sense of how they communicate. If we have time and it works on this call, I can actually stop at the end and just give you a quick show. But basically, you then are able to see a video and understand how that carer is going to communicate, and you can make a decision from that about, is this person going to be able to communicate effectively? So that's how we do it. We kind of show people how they can communicate. So I think that's really important. And then in terms of kind of cultural assimilation, part of our Life in the UK training is specifically designed to cover that. And I think it's important to recognise that cultural communication needs to go both ways. So it's about the international care worker learning certain things that are important. Like we say please and thank you a lot more in the UK than they do in West Africa, for example. And that's not being rude, it's just not said. They just don't say please and thank you to the same extent. But it's also about cross-cultural communication with the care provider as well, and explaining to them, sometimes you might perceive this to be a rudeness or a different form of communication, but this is just a cultural difference. And I think we've had success with that and communicating that to people as well. And then also it's about providing care providers with support when they do face the genuinely racist clients. How do you communicate with that? And in general, I would say that a lot of those worries turn out to be unfounded. Is that when those carers go in, they actually get great feedback, they form great rapport with the families. And as long as you're supportive and kind to those care workers as you would be of any other of your staff, because these are your staff and you're looking after them, then that will build great loyalty with them as well.
Okay, thanks. And in terms of when candidates are successful, how do you ensure that they're safeguarded and supported within the recruitment process and beyond? How does that all sort of manifest itself?
Yeah, so the first thing that happens is when candidates apply on WhatsApp, then we screen them, and if we think they're good enough, then we'll put them on a dashboard, and then they'll get invited to interview. And then once they get the job, we have a really lovely job. One of our colleagues gets to phone them all and tell them they've got a job, and then often we try and get them to send us a little video of what it means to them. And those videos are some of the most amazing things, like people crying and telling us what it's going to mean for them, because it is completely life-changing for these families, not just for now, but for generations to come. And then we do an expectations call. And what we do in that call is we say, these are all of the things to expect in the UK, and we check again that they understand the commitment they're making and what life is going to be like. We check they've got the finance to support themselves. Then they download our mobile app, and then we run all of our compliance and background checks through the mobile app. And then we also deliver through the mobile app some training around driving and around cultural support. And then once they get here, we have a full-time carer relocation advisor whose job it is to make sure that those carers have a great experience here in Britain. And so they can communicate with us through the app kind of anytime, day or night, and they can also communicate directly with our relocation advisor. And then we also have a code of expectations that we require from care providers that we work with. So if care providers want to do things that are against our values, then we will speak to them about it. So for example, we won't work with any recruitment agent. We won't pay anyone that has charged anything to the carers. That's against the law, so we won't allow that. We insist that care providers do have the work for that carer, so they can't bring people over and then not have work for them. And then we will regularly poll the carers to make sure they're happy, and if not, we'll bring that feedback directly to the minds of care providers. And we have had a couple of instances of where carers have been experiencing racial abuse, for example, and they haven't told their employer, and so we will advocate for them and making sure that they are expressing those concerns and supporting that employer. And likewise, if the employer has concerns about the way a carer is performing in their role, then we become the first point of call to try and tackle those issues.
Okay, fantastic. So do you have any plans to expand the services that Lifted Talent provide?
Always, yes. I mean, our platform is very deliberately meant to be about fixing recruitment and retention in the healthcare sector overall. And so it's very deliberately recruitment and retention. So obviously right now we're really focused on recruitment, international recruitment, but the vision is much more holistic than that. It's about how do we get the supply of people that we're going to need with the right skills in the right place, the right time for the people that are going to need that care. And that is a global challenge. The aging population is expanding. In the UK alone, demand for care is going to increase or almost double in the next 15 years. Meanwhile, the capacity of carers continues to decline. The number of district nurses has declined. There's a huge challenge the number of doctors in the NHS is facing. So our expansion is to be across that whole breadth of healthcare, but also across that whole journey of a care worker. So what we think is really interesting is that if you look at the amount of technological innovation in the care sector, there's a lot around care management systems, but there's actually very little around recruitment and retention. Mm-hmm. And actually making sure that care is not just a job, it's a career. And that's where we want our technology to expand into as we go. So helping people progress their careers so that we get more and more great people into the sector and keep them there, because that's what we're going to need to meet the challenges of an aging population and to give people the care. It's a mark of a society, right? Is how do we care for the people we love most when they can't care for themselves anymore? And that's what we're dedicated to doing for however long it takes.
Fantastic, thank you. So what advice would you give to any home care providers that are thinking about exploring the international recruitment market?
Well, obviously, slightly biased questions. I mean, I guess we built our system to try and make it easier. So you can drop me a line at Rachael at liftedcare.com and have a kind of no obligation chat. I think my main advice would be if you're going to do it on your own, so you're not going to work with a partner like ours, then you need to make sure you understand the rules inside and out, and they will change. There is a lot of information on the Home Office website, and you can get through it. And if you phone the Home Office Business Helpline, they are actually really helpful. You have to wait on hold, but they are helpful when you get hold of them. So I just make sure you understand the rules. Maybe speak to a few care providers that have done it before, and then just try and put yourself in their shoes. Whether it's one of your children that's left and gone to university, whether it's yourself if you've ever lived abroad, try and put yourself in the position of moving to a whole new place and understanding what that's like and thinking holistically about what support that person requires, because it is brilliant. It can transform your business. I mean, one care provider we're working with has doubled their revenue in 4 months because of the number of hours they've been able to take on. So that's great, but it is a huge responsibility, and so you should make sure that you understand all the rules and what letting yourself in for before you do that.
Right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Rachael, that we haven't touched upon?
No, I think you've asked lots of things. I just think international recruitment has huge potential to help the care sector, but it also has huge potential to damage the reputation of the care sector if we're not supporting people when they come here and we're exploiting them. And I understand, I'm a care provider, right? So I know how it feels on, a Friday night and you want to be at the restaurant and carer phones in sick and you're like, I just need someone to go to that shift. And, international recruitment, I can see in that scenario where people might not treat the carers that are sponsored the way they should be treated because they're just so desperate for those hours. But these are great people. They're here to shape not just the future of the care sector, but the future of our country. And I think it's beholden on us as people that have dedicated our careers to helping people to make sure that we extend that same care to the care workers that we're recruiting. But I think the other thing I would just say on that is it's also an incredible thing to be part of, to feel like you are helping people at both ends of the system. So you already help your clients, but to feel like you are changing the lives of care workers and their kids is a huge privilege as well. And so don't underestimate how rewarding it is as well to get involved in international recruitment.
Thank you very much. Did you want to share your platform with us, just so we can have a little look?
I'll show you.
That'd be great.
Things. Give me a second. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen briefly. I'll just do a quick review so we can. But effectively, you as an individual care provider get your own dashboard. So this is an example here of a dashboard. And then what happens is that you click on the individual person that you want to have a look at. So I'm just going to look at some of the ones that have already been hired. Here we go. So then if we scroll down, you can click on individual profiles. So if I click on Nena, for example, so she's a care worker that moved from Nigeria to the UK to work for a care provider up in Warrington. You can see there's a bit of screening information here about her experience. You read a little bit about her background, and you can come down and actually watch a little video of Nena. So I'll just put that on the screen so you can get a sense of what Nena is like. Oh, push the wrong button.
Hello, my name is Nena Kalu Ulisadebe. I am a Nigerian, but I schooled in the UK between 2013 and 2014. I had my master's degree in the University of Manchester. Now, having lived in the UK for over a year, I witnessed the rich and unique culture of the British people. The stunning architecture and beautiful countryside were a sight to behold. The UK is a place I would love to come back to because apart from the stunning architecture that it possesses, it's also a place that has a very strong economy, high standard of living, equality, and a good work-life balance. Thank you.
So that's Nena. So if you like the sound of Nena, then you can go up here and click request interview. You just put in the link and that's it. The interview appears in your diary. And then after the interview, you can click on hire Nena here and then she becomes your care worker. And then we have a different system, which I won't show you just now, which will run all the automated compliance for you as well. So you can see what's happening there.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Rachel. Thank you so much. It's very, very interesting.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for asking me to speak to you. And yeah, if you're interested, you can check out our website. I think we'll put the links in the interview, but lifted-talent.com. And then you can also email me at rachel@liftedcare.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.